Hey there, come join me. I'm going to be building a deck in this video here. Well, excuse me, not a deck, but a roof over a deck. So, first thing we got to do here is I'm going to be putting in 3 4x4 posts, and I need to figure out where they actually go. So I'm going to do that here at the deck. So first I made a 3, 4, 5 square triangle here, or a Pythagorean theorem, excuse me. So using that method, I came out from the wall 11'4", and then I moved over 178.5 inches, and then I can't remember what the measurement was, but I made the diagonal, and there's my square mark. So now that we know that, I can come over here and mark the other side of where it goes. I messed up once there. So now we're gonna go ahead and get all of these cut out here. With all of our cutouts made, I now take my handy dandy little laser here, and I'm going to shoot up and find out exactly where to dig all of my footers for all of my posts. As I'm digging here on this lady's property here, I want to make sure I don't make a mess anywhere, so I like to put all my dirt straight in a wheelbarrow. And as you saw, I scooped all the river rock off to the side so I can use it to refill in any parts of my hole that are still showing after the fact. We're going to fast forward here a little bit. All the concrete's already done and poured and hard. So now, underneath all 3 of my holes here, I've got a nice place for a 4x4 post to go. And so I get 3 of them. They're all 20 footers. And we're going to slip them down each hole here. These 4x4 posts are just roughly sitting on their brackets. I'm going to take the 2 edge ones and nail them down, centered on their bracket. And then I'll take a string line and I will make sure the middle one is perfectly straight with both the edges. As I hold the string line here, I pull it out away from my post just a little bit to make sure that I'm not actually making an arch in the string with it, that it's actually coming in contact with that middle one at the same time as I come in contact with my edge one. And it's nice and straight, so now we can nail it down. Next thing I did was I marked a 312 roof line on it, and I put up the string line here to kind of show the homeowner, give her a little bit of a visual example of where the heights are going to be at and everything. And she was happy with it all, so with her approval, we went ahead and continued. I went ahead and I slipped up some flashing here underneath the siding, and now I'm going to take this rafter board here and I'm going to stick it up on the wall, and I'm going to put ledger locks in it, 2 of them at every 4 foot, right into a floor joist. All right, now it's time to cut our beam to length here. So I'm going to cut a 312 angle on the edge of this beam, matching the angle of the roof. I think that's kind of cool and pretty to have them both be the same. So cut one side there, then we go ahead and measure out the next side. As you cut these 3.5-inch thick beams, it is extremely critical that you have square marks all around your board, which I almost forgot to do right there. Yeah, it's very tricky to make sure you actually have a nice flush edge with your cut, because if you do it wrong, then you'll sort of have a saw blade mark, or just, more material on one side than you do the other. Here's how my cut turned out, and I'm very happy with it. So on these beams, these are a very big statement piece to the porch. So I like to take a lot of care in making sure that this cut edge doesn't look like a cut edge. So I like to take a hobby rasp or a file and just round over those corners, getting rid of any sort of saw burrs that the skill saw makes. And then once all that's done and clean, then I sand over the whole thing. I just use 80 grit sandpaper. That should be just fine enough for this outside beam. And then we put some finish on it, which I'm using Frog Seal. It's really good for helping keep water out of your wood. Where I live in the Pacific Northwest, it's very, very rainy over here. So Frog Seal is the go-to item for anything we have for outside porches and things. Because anything we can do to help get rid of water, the better. It's going a little backwards here, but now that my beam's cut, I'm ready to set it on my posts. But my posts are not cut to length yet, so I'm doing that right here. I go ahead and mark them and snip them off twice with the skill saw there. And then I take my hobby rasp and round over those edges just yet again. And then I'll put some Frog Seal on the top of that post before I put on my bracket. My brackets are just some normal Simpson ones that I spray painted black to make them look pretty. But now all three of my posts are cut. We're ready to take the beam and set them on top. Beams up and my boards are up. So now it's time to work on my rafters. So I like to get one rafter and I like to get it set right in place and make sure that it is perfectly good in just every way, shape, and form, that it's flush at the top and that we are sitting on top of my beam nice and level. Once I get one side up there and marked, then I go ahead and I'll cut it, double check it, and then I'll go to the other side to ensure that they are all in fact the same. So, unfortunately, off camera, I went ahead and I cut all of my rafters the same size. I just simply take my one I cut and I mark it on top of all of my boards. I have 9 rafters in total here. So I took my one pattern and I used that to mark out 8 other boards. Yeah, it is a rainy day here, so I got my camera undercover. And yeah, I go ahead and am just tacking up my edges up onto my band board here at the top. And then my bottoms, I just like to have those floating. They're not nailed down or anything. And then once the top is all good, I'm going to go ahead and throw in all of my blocks. I've got my miter saw out here, so I like to put some cardboard up over it so it stays dry. Isn't that nice little rain setup? So here I am cutting all of my 2x4 blocks that are going to go in between all my rafters. I've got to say, this DeWalt stand for the miter saw is one of the best things I've ever gotten for a tool. It is so nice just to have a workstation that I can move anywhere I need to. So all of my rafters now need to be attached down to my beam. So the method I'm using here is I'm just pre-drilling a 1/4-inch hole there. I'm going to stick in these 8-inch long timber locks to hold down the roof structure. This is a very light roof that's going to have plastic on top, The plastic rib is actually going to be right above where the head of the screw sits, so it won't interfere with the roofing at all. And you can watch here me struggle with my DeWalt. I've had this drill a very long time, and it is very close to the end of its life. It is struggling to get this thing in. Oh, it breaks my heart seeing it sad. Maybe I should switch to Ryobi. I simply used a framing nail gun with 3-inch galvanized nails to nail in all these blocks you see here. Now that they're all in, I can start working on my roof. These sheets of roofing have an 1.5 inches of overlap, so I've planned ahead to have my 1.5 inches of overlap right on top of my joists. That way you don't see a dark spot in the roof. I go ahead and I screw it down every other rib. Every screw I put in is I make sure it's very important that I don't over tighten the screw. You don't want to over squish the washer, otherwise it will be prone to leaking in the future. And here they're all up. And now I'm finally in the dry. What a glorious feeling. Hey, I hope you liked this video. If you did, think about subscribing maybe.